Joining us on the Guadalupe Radio Network with a bit of insight into Eastern Rite liturgies in the Catholic Church is Deacon Dave Dominguez, also known in the tradition with the title of Father Deacon Dave Dominguez. Deacon Dave is a native Houstonian and a graduate of the University of St. Thomas. He serves at St. John Chrysostom Byzantine Catholic Church in Houston. Deacon Dave, thanks for coming in on the program. Appreciate your being here. Great to have you here in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
I want to ask you all about Eastern Rite Catholic churches and learn a little bit more about the liturgy, learn a little bit more about the tradition. But first, I want to ask you about kind of the top headline news that I've been reading about. Our new Pope, Pope Leo XIV, had greeted a number of Eastern Catholics at the Vatican between May 12th and May 14th, which was very important because it was a Pilgrim Jubilee for the Eastern Catholics. And he had said about how important the liturgy is and talked about how the church needs you. Tell me just, first off, Deacon Dave, how you feel with the new Pope, and that right off the bat, he's acknowledging the importance of Eastern Rite churches in our Catholic Church, Universal Church.
Well, first off, I'm very excited. I think all of us, especially here, American Catholics, are really excited, and we're very hopeful and optimistic. And I've been following on social media. Everyone is like analyzing and dissecting his every move and trying to figure out what does this mean for his pontificate. And a lot of the stuff I'm hearing is that he's definitely going to be a continuation of the pastoral side of Pope Francis. And for us Easterners, Pope Francis was a huge ally, supporter. He it's my understanding that he was the ordinary of Eastern Catholics while he was in Argentina. So he's very familiar with our churches and our traditions. And so, I think the consensus is that Pope Leo is going to continue that. It was very exciting to see the images. I think it's the Pope Paul VI Hall. Yeah. It was very exciting to see those images. And then for my particular church, there was emailed out to all the clergy photographs of our bishops meeting with Pope Leo. So our Metropolitan Archbishop William, who's in Pittsburgh, there was a big picture of him with Pope Leo. And then the Bishop of Passaic, Bishop Kurt, who's actually a Texan. And then one of our newer bishops, Bishop Robert out of Parma, each meeting with the Pope. So that was a big deal, spreading around through email and social media. So yeah, a big lot of excitement in the Eastern Catholic social media realm right now for what happened a few days ago.
Already have all the pictures with the Pope and the bishops, so that's great. So tell me, for people who might be unfamiliar with Eastern Rite or Eastern Catholic churches, Deacon Dave, just give me an overview. What do we mean when we're talking about this group of Catholics? Yeah,
so we are sister churches, part of the greater Catholic or Universal Church. And so the historical origin of a lot of these churches is that they were Eastern Orthodox at one time. And for whatever reason, disagreements, they returned to Rome. They petitioned the Pope of Rome, hey, we would like to come back in, but we want to preserve our unique traditions and our liturgy and our ritual. And so there's been different points in history where these churches have come back to Rome. And the popes at the time said, yeah, absolutely, come back and you can maintain and preserve your traditions, which is, I think, one of the themes that Pope Leo talked about, the importance of these churches not trying to imitate the Roman Catholic Church, but being true to themselves and their traditions and their liturgical rituals.
And like you say, some of these traditions go back all the way to the beginning of the church, 2,000 years of tradition.
Yeah, I recently saw a liturgy by the Ethiopian Catholics there in Rome, and Ethiopia is in this kind of rivalry with Armenia as to which one was the first country to accept Christianity as its official religion.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Christianity in Ethiopia is centuries and centuries old.
Yeah, it's incredible. So then, like you said, when we talk about those Eastern Rite groups, could come from different countries, maybe Syriac tradition, like I said, Greek, the Orthodox tradition. Tell me about your church in particular. It's a Byzantine Catholic Church.
Correct.
Tell me a little bit specifically about the liturgy for that.
Yeah. So the Byzantine Church, that's the name we use here in the United States.
Okay.
It's historically called the Ruthenian Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. And Ruthenia is this area kind of in central or Eastern Europe. Mm-hmm. If you know your geography, the Carpathian Mountains.
Okay.
The southern part of those mountains. So what is today, Eastern Slovakia, Western Ukraine, that kind of northern part of Hungary, even into parts of Romania. Long time ago, that used to be called Ruthenia. And these were Eastern Christians under Orthodox bishops. And at one point, they petitioned Rome to be accepted back at it was the Union of Usharod, where the Pope of Rome accepted them back, and they were able to maintain their traditions, their customs, and most importantly, their liturgy. Mm-hmm. And so in the U.S., we're known as the Byzantine Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of like the history of our particular church.
Sure. Now, tell me about, your specific parish, St. John Chrysostom. I know that you guys have what's called a divine liturgy. Correct. On Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. I'm guessing a lot of this is similar to what we might think of as a Roman Rite Mass, in the sense that obviously the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, probably a lot of incense, presence of the Holy Spirit. Tell me a little bit more about the liturgy itself.
Yeah, so it's analogous to what a Roman Catholic would call Mass. Okay. We don't call it Mass because, as you know, the word Mass comes from the Latin text at the very end, ita missa est, right? And that's I think it's called the synecdoche, right? Where one piece kind of gives the name to the whole thing. Mm-hmm. We don't really call our liturgy a Mass because we don't use that phrase. We call it the Divine Liturgy, and we usually have. Throughout the year, we have two versions. We have the Liturgy of St. Basil and the Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom. The Liturgy of St. Basil is a little longer. It's older. The Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom is a little bit more recent, and it's kind of a condensed form of the St. Basil. So during penitential seasons, during Lent, we'll do the Liturgy of St. Basil, but the majority of the year we'll do the Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom. Mm-hmm. And like you said, there is similarities there. For example, we have the first part is the Liturgy of the Word. Yeah. We have an epistle reading, we have the gospel reading, and that usually ends with a homily. Mm-hmm. And then after the homily, we'll have petitions, a litany, like prayer to the faithful, similar in the Roman Rite. And then we begin the Liturgy of the Eucharist. And that would also be very familiar. We have bread and wine. The priest does the words of consecration. Mm-hmm. There's the calling down of the Holy Spirit. And then the clergy commune, then the faithful commune. Mm-hmm. And then there'll be some concluding prayers. And that's our liturgy. Yeah,
so very, very similar, very relatable.
Yeah.
That's great. So then tell me a little about that. I do want to ask you about your title then, Deacon Dave, because in the tradition, you're also known by some as Father Deacon Dave. So I want to specify that you are a deacon, not necessarily a priest.
Yes.
But that tradition kind of has that title, I guess, in some parts of the world where it's a Father Deacon.
Yeah, that can be a little confusing.
Yeah, I imagine.
So it seems like the churches of Slavic origin, so for example, the Ruthenian Church is of Slavic origin, that kind of Central Eastern European homeland. For example, the Ukrainians, they have this tradition, the Russians have this tradition of calling their deacons Father. I don't see it so much with the Greeks and the Arab churches. I think it's something unique to Slavic churches. I think it's just a sign of respect of the ordained office. I'll tell you a personal story that happened that can lead to confusion. Years ago, when I was a younger man, I went to visit a Russian Orthodox church here in Houston. And after the liturgy, we all went to the hall for coffee, and one of the clergy in full cassock comes up to greet me, and he says, I'm not going to say his name because I think he's still serving in Houston, but he says, Father, I'm Father. And so, oh, Father. And I go to receive a blessing. And he says, no, I'm a deacon. So I was like, oh, okay. Because in the Russians, they just introduce them, in the Russian tradition, they just introduce themselves as Father and then the name, so you don't know if it's a priest or a deacon. So in our church, we say Father Deacon just to kind of avoid any confusions or embarrassment. But, I go by Father Deacon. It's not a big deal. But yeah, it's just something unique to our tradition.
Yeah, very interesting. So when did you get the calling, Deacon Dave, to be to serve as a deacon in the church? Did you always knew that you wanted to participate in the life of the church at a young age?
It's kind of complicated. I always felt a spiritual tug from an early age, a young boy. I didn't grow up in a Catholic. I grew up very secular.
Okay.
So my parents did not really emphasize religion in the household. I had, for Easter, it was the Easter bunny and picking up eggs, and that was it. That was the totality of Easter. But as an adult, reflecting on my youth and my childhood, my parents did kind of teach us religion in their own way. It's something I can now see in hindsight. But when I was a teenager, I was a very weird teenager. I was.
Well, we're all a little weird as teenagers. That's okay.
But instead of playing video games, I wanted to read the Torah in Hebrew, things like that.
Okay, interesting.
So my parents encouraged me to really explore religion and spirituality and find a place.
Because they knew you had an interest in it.
Correct.
Okay.
The thing is, I felt that connection. I didn't have a way to express it because I didn't have a religious upbringing. And so I kind of had to learn on my own. Fast forward to about 12 years ago is when my wife and I first set foot at St. John Chrysostom. And we found our home. We found our community, our parish. We set roots there. We became integrated into this parish family. I say we were adopted because, for example, I myself, I don't have a Slavic ancestry. A lot of the founders of our churches, they come from, the old country, from Slovakia, southern Ukraine, Hungary. I don't have those ethnic connections, but I was, myself, my wife, we were embraced. And so I say we were adopted into this parish family. And I was integrating myself in the community and started volunteering for things around the parish. And so my vocation story, I always put it on the community because they were the ones that really kind of put that idea in my head. I remember the deacon at the time is the first one to just kind of come up to me and say, have you ever thought of studying to become a deacon? And I said, no, not really. But the fact that he did it, he saw something in me, that meant a lot. And then as I was, as the years went by, people in the community would just kind of randomly say, well, you're going to go into the deacon program, aren't you? And I was like, well, I didn't think about it, but I guess I could.
But the power of suggestion.
Yeah. So I say that my vocation came from the community.
Yeah, that's great. It's just another reminder, because I hear that a lot for our vocation stories, that a suggestion like that, have you ever thought about being a deacon, or have you ever thought about being a priest, usually is where a lot of this stuff starts, because then you get to be thinking about it. So, well, what would that be? What would that entail? And stuff like that. Well, I'm guessing then that you had a good kind of basis then for that, because you'd gone to the University of St. Thomas for college, right? So
Yes.
I'm guessing that kind of helped to have some
Yes.
kind of a foundation.
And I just, now that you brought it up, I have a memory of sitting in church history class. It was taught by a nun, a sister. If there's any St. Thomas alumnus out there, Sister Madeline Grace, may she rest in peace. I remember after class, she slipped me a paper on my desk. It was a flyer for a vocation retreat. And she said, "You ever think about this?"
Wow. So it's almost like God has kind of been dropping you hints for a little while throughout different.
I think, wasn't it Kierkegaard that said something about life being experienced in reverse? So now, reflecting, I see these little episodes.
Right.
And now they make sense. Now that I'm here, they make sense. But at the time, I didn't really put it all together.
Very good. Deacon Dave, tell me why it's so important for us, as we do here in this radio station, but so many churches, that we pray for vocations.
We need them.
Yeah.
We need them. We need the sacraments.
Yeah.
Without the sacraments, what do we have? We don't have a church. We cease being Catholic.
Right. And I should acknowledge that your church, St. John Chrysostom, you guys have several deacons, including yourself, but it's really only one priest, right? And
correct.
So there's that need for more priests.
Yes. And so I would say, kind of based on my personal situation, if you're a member of a community and you see a young man that's really, volunteering, wanting to spend time in the church, wanting to help the community, maybe they need a little suggestion. That could make a major difference in their life.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we definitely pray for more vocations, for young men to heed the call. We need the sacraments. We need the sacraments more than ever, and that's what makes our church is the sacraments. So we definitely need that.
Very good. Well, certainly a good reminder for us to continue to pray for young men to consider the priesthood or religious life. Very good. So the other good part that I wanted just to round out this out, Deacon Dave, is the fact that your church, like I said, has been so welcoming to you, been welcoming to visitors and stuff like that. So I'm sure if people want to learn more about St. John Chrysostom and the Byzantine and y'all's divine liturgy, I know y'all are welcoming to people who just want to check it out. I know that you guys are going to have a tour group coming up on June the 8th, a mutual friend named Tristan who's leading the group there. So I'll post some information about that in the link with this video. But I was going to say, if people have any questions or want to learn more, I guess they can reach out to the church, right?
Oh, definitely. By all means, come visit us. 10 a.m., Divine Liturgy. You're going to be a little confused. That's okay.
Yeah, a little bit different.
Yeah. And I always say, we have this green or teal book that has all the prayers because people, they want to participate, makes sense. But our book is kind of complicated. There's a lot of page turning if you want to follow along on the liturgy. And I tell visitors, you didn't come here to put your nose in a book, right? You came here to experience the divine liturgy. So for first-time visitors, I say, don't try to follow along the book. Just experience the liturgy, see what's going on. Some things you will recognize, some things you will not recognize, and you'll have questions. The other cool thing about our tradition is that after liturgy, we all go to the parish hall and we have fellowship. That's the norm. And so for visitors, I highly, highly encourage you, once the liturgy's done, don't run off to the parking lot and hop in your car. Please come to the social hall, have a cup of coffee or some cookies or something, and engage with the community. That's, I think that was a big deal for me when I first arrived at St. John's, is having that fellowship and made to feel welcomed. And so I think that's part of the reason why I stuck around.
Yeah, very good. Powerful reminder of community that we are. Very good. And, of course, the wider community, of course, in the faith in the Catholic Church, the universal church. Deacon Dave Dominguez, deacon at St. John Chrysostom Byzantine Catholic Church in Houston. Thank you so much for your insight. We really appreciate your being on today.
Thank you for having me.